Matter of fact, Jonathan gave him all of his vestments and his armor and his outer garments, his sword, his bow, as a sign that David is a brother to him. And Saul takes him into his home, and they go out to war. And then this is where the trouble began. The ladies. I'm teasing. It was there from this morning. They sing this song, and Saul gets enraged. Why does Saul get enraged? Because it's ascribed to David more men killed than to Saul. And for a lot of times we looked at that you have this issue, and you see this with Saul. We're going to pick up here pretty much in the same vein, where you see people, instead of being happy for the success for others, especially in a situation like you have here with a king, he doesn't see this as, man, I got a dude I can cut loose and he'll kill 10,000 dudes by himself. No, he's a what? He's a rival. There's jealousy. This man could threaten my position. Now, up to this point, I don't think Saul really understands who David really, really is. And so you already have this seed of this trust being sown. And we pick up tonight, only a very short section. And by that I mean like 10 verses. So, for me that's short. Starting in verse, not 8, we already read that one. But we'll pick up in 9. And Saul eyed David from that day on. Verse 10. Next day a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre, and he did it day by day. And Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. What a loving man. I just love you so much, brother. And David evaded him twice. And Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him and had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people, and David had success in all of his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fear and awe of him. But all of Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them. What you got going on here? The next day, after Saul began to look at David with suspicion, what occurs? An evil spirit doesn't come upon him. Notice the language, and the language is very extreme in the Hebrew. It's not, the evil spirit slowly descended upon him, and David and Saul began to turn slowly. No. It rushed upon and seized Saul. It's almost the same as when an enemy launches an ambush and with such speed attacks its opponent to where there's nothing left of the opponent. That's the language that's being used here. David's master, for better sense of the word, has now been seized and gripped upon by an evil spirit sent from God to bring Saul and torment Saul in his existence. Why? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. He didn't want him to be kingdom in the first place. But secondly, God utilizes, and a lot of people will grab this and go, see here, God is using an evil spirit to torment a person. Yes, for what's the purpose? Is he doing it because he's sitting in heaven going, I think I'll make Saul chase his tail today. It's not like me with the cat and the laser. And you can ask Stephanie, I take great twisted delight in tormenting the cat because it has no name. It's known as, in my house, by me, as simply the cat. No, we have 2 dogs, him and Samson, but we have a cat. Well, I don't like cats. They're an extra food ration. But God is not up in heaven with a laser going, watch me wait, Saul. That would push God in that category of a malicious, malignant being, much like what the devil is. Notice that he has him do this, but even in all cases, this happened before. And God sent David to play what? To soothe Saul. A harp. And this is how they began. he also see where God has utilized great evil to bring about a furtherance of his actions. Notice that if you go back all the way, to 49 in the book of Genesis with Joseph, and the brothers come and apologize to Joseph. He says, what you intended for a great evil, and this is really the language here, that what you intended for a great evil or great harm, God utilized to bring out a good means in which to save many people alive. And so we have this come upon Saul, and notice what happens. Look at the language. It rushed upon him, it seized a hold of him, and he raved within the house while David was playing the lyre. And so the lyre does not help Saul in his ravings. And this ravings, it has the language of that he was prophesying, but not prophesying things from God, but actually prophesying, speaking for the evil spirit. You ever seen those movies where you got the person that just has gone manic or has gone, and they're just raving, and you hear them tell things, and it's all over the place, and they're going around. That's kind of the imagery you have here. You got Saul going, this guy's going to take my throne, he's going to take my throne, he's got to do something, got to stop, take my throne. Kind of the conversations I have on a daily basis with myself. Anyhow, now notice what happens here. Here's David playing. He's trying to soothe Saul. And Saul's jealousy gets to the point that he picks up a spear. Now, this is a young man that Saul loved at one time. This is a young man that Saul put in charge of his armies to go and fight the Philistines and has come back, and that's when he gets the moniker of killing his tens of thousands and Saul his thousands. He picks up his spear and he goes, hey, let's go kill some hogs. He goes, I will pin this man to the wall. The jealousy that comes in the heart of Saul through the ravings and the attachment of this evil spirit is not something which I have a man who in my kingdom I can put in charge of 1,000 men, and I have no fear that when he goes out in battle, he will so decimate the enemy that we will be powerful and no other army can stand against us. I have a man of such great talent and ability that therefore I turn him loose and a project is done. No, this man will contend with me for the throne, and what I must do is pin him to the wall. Do you see how Saul in his ravings and in his action has allowed jealousy and strife and lack of a better term, anger, drive his train to where he picks up a spear and he tries to pin this young man to the wall. Not once, twice. In a very short subsequent time. Now, if I was David, okay, this is where David and I would part ways. You try to pin me to the wall with a spear, there's no, oh, my bad, sorry, I was practicing indoors. I'm sorry. No. But look at the character of David. He stays even after the first time and evades a second time. He is still loyal to a man who is going to or trying to kill him. And this is not the only time this happens. Soon Saul begins a campaign to hunt David down, and Saul falls into David's hands how many times? Twice. You see a little parallel there, a little parallelism within the text. I think it's kind of interesting. Saul tries to kill David twice, and David remains loyal. Saul is in a position where David could kill him twice, and David remains loyal, even at the urging of his men. We'll get to that later on. That's a little cliffhanger, so you got to show up to find out what goes on in those chapters. I agree. He raves day by day. What used to soothe him does not. He gets enraged to the point that he becomes homicidal, not once, not twice. But notice who has the fear. Saul has the fear. Jealousy and strife are usually reactions from an aspect of fear. I can be replaced. I can be supplanted. One of the worst things you can do to a control freak is make them think that they are going to lose power. They flip out. When I was in Italy, the first boss I worked with, he was a super control freak. And there's several ways of handling a control freak. My favorite is when they want all the information possible, you feed them all the information they want, and then some. I had a guy that wanted so much information, I blew up his email in 3 days with about 40-something emails with paragraphs of stuff that had something to do with the topic, but really not. It's like, oh, you want some information? And finally he got to the point that he had so much to read that he couldn't read it, and he goes, stop! I'll go back to my cubicle, sir, and I'll let you know what my decision is. Thank you. Have a good night. He was so, his is what ended up getting him fired. He was such a control freak that he just was one of those people that he could not make it. Seriously, you'd walk into the room and go, sir, red or blue? I need more information. There's only 2 colors in my hand, red or blue, sir. Which color would you like? I don't know. It's just not enough information for me to make a decision. Red or blue? Which color do you like, sir, red or blue? I don't know. I don't know if I like red or do I like blue. Blue, red, blue. I don't know. I need more information. Sir, there's absolutely no more information on the color of red or blue other than the fact that they are both red and or blue. Please pick a color. We do not care. We have to do this, and these are the 2 colors we have. This is coming from the colonel who's on my phone because you won't answer yours. Please pick a color. I don't know. Sir, I'm going to go back and tell the colonel you can't make up your mind. Red. Blue. No red. Hey, did you tell him red? Yeah. I really want blue. Sir, he wants to change the color to blue. That's a control freak. And control freaks get that way. And one of the things, you want to weird them out. Start making them worry about losing control. And Saul is not a control freak. Saul is a jealous man. And it's the same with jealous people. You want to make jealous people nuts? Watch all these murder mystery things. I think Steph is planning my murder because she sits there and we watch Snapped and we watch these other shows and she takes notes. I'm like going, why are you writing that down, baby? Oh, it's just interesting. I think I'll write a novel one day. No, she does not.
Well, don't do an internet search. That comes back.
I know. But it's the computer's in my name, so it looked like I did it. She's crafty, that one. But you sit and you watch it, and when you watch those shows, when you deal with the jealous people there, they are so controlling that their number one fear is what? The person leaving. They become homicidal to maintain the person. You can utilize this and look at this passage from several different aspects of the human mindset. But basically, when you begin to be at such a point that you are so fearful of someone else supplanting you in the activities that you are doing, you have usually 2 responses. It's here, take it all. Take it all. Every time my inbound came in and I was outbound, I made such a small footprint in the office that my footprint wasn't in the office. Think about it. You like that? I was not even there. I was such a ghost. She's like, I'll right seat ride with you for 3 days, and then it's all you. There you go. Where are you going to be? Anywhere other than in here. You're now the chaplain. Enjoy. And off you go. And so that's one response. When you have somebody that comes in, you've got that response. And then the other is, no, mine. My precious. If you've seen those movies, you know exactly who I'm talking about. My precious. And you'll go to your grave trying to hold on to it. And the thing is, this guy is driving himself mad and now has an evil spirit driving him mad. And he utilizes this activity not for the betterment of his kingdom, but for the destruction of one person. And as we go and continue to unpack chapter 18 into 19, he tries to set a trap repeatedly to destroy this man who deep down is going to end up replacing him. Instead of looking at it and go, man, I've got a guy who I can give a task to, and he will obliterate the opponent. Let's take a look at it and see what happens. Saul was afraid of David, not because David killed Goliath, not because David was artful at dodging spears, not because David was, he was on the Jewish pole vaulting team or the javelin team. No, it wasn't any of that. Why? Because the Lord was with him. Something Saul did not have, David had. This is the source of the rub. Saul used to have the Spirit of the Lord upon him. Remember, it comes upon him when he goes out for his first battle and he's successful. Subsequently, after that, he begins reading his own mail and believing his own report card and begins stepping into other roles. And then finally, the Lord departs from him. But he is terrified. Why? Because what used to be upon him is now upon David. And the rage and the anger and the angst and all that goes on is that David now has the Lord upon him. And if you look at anything in Old Testament history, when the man of God has the Lord upon him, he soon becomes the leader of the people. And that's one of the things you can clearly draw. Go look at the book of Judges. The Spirit of the Lord came upon X mightily, and they went out in battle and were successful. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon X mightily, and they went out into battle. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon X, and you see all the way through the book of Judges. You see this, and Saul has experienced this. So Saul knows exactly, kind of kind of how you find out that someone is replacing you, and then you have that uncomfortable feeling knowing that you have been replaced. And you kind of had that uncomfortable feeling all along. Well, that's kind of going on. And since it's an evil spirit, no doubt that this evil spirit has been poisoning Paul's mind with this man will supplant you. This man will replace you. This man will take your throne. And if you kill him now, if you strike him down now, if you kill him now, he can't. We see this in politics. Have you not seen the new campaign against Ben Carson because he said that he would rush the gunner that would walk into... I find this interesting and both amazing. He makes this statement, what would you do in a mass shooting? Well, I would rush the man with the gun because I'm not going to die being shot like an animal. Ben Carson, can you believe that guy? He would actually rush the gunman. Yeah, I would. Why? Well, it's easier to help take this guy out if everyone rushed him. He can't shoot all of us. Well, he could with enough ammo and an automatic weapon, but he can't kill all of us if we all rush him, but if we all run, he can eventually get us all. And notice how the product of destruction comes. Why? Because he doesn't fit the agenda that a lot of people want, and so the means is not, well, we don't necessarily like Ben Carson's idea, but we don't like this. But we decided we're going to destroy him because of that. You see this in politics on both sides, this campaign of destruction. Why? Because the incumbent does not want to be replaced by someone else, so they begin to go through their lives and look through tactics to destroy them. Let's go and dig up dirt on this guy. Clearly somebody this squeaky clean has some dirt. And so now we have a political machine that's not about the right person, but about who we can eliminate, and the only guy left is the guy that has less dirt than the other guy who has more dirt. And it's a model of destruction. Why? Because we don't want to be supplanted. You can apply this within family dynamics, within work dynamics. You see this a lot, and I saw this a lot in the military, and guys would sabotage other dudes so they could move up. And when the military starts cutting back, you'll see this more and more. The guys will begin to sabotage the work of other individuals so they can promote and the other guy won't. It is a horrific cycle once you begin down this road. Why? Because you can't come back. Or it's almost impossible to come back. Once you begin down the campaign of destruction of another person, it is hard to turn that tide. And Saul is done. He is done. He will rave, he will rant, and eventually he will die unceremoniously in battle. And look at the language that's around this. He was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. The jealousy of what has occurred is driving Saul mad with the aid of this evil demon. So Saul removed him from his presence, this would be David, and made him the commander of thousands. And he went out and came in before the people. This would be David. So he goes out to battle and he returns. He goes out to battle and he returns. He goes out to battle. Saul puts him in charge of men to where hopefully, as David did with Uriah, he goes out to battle and he doesn't come back. I wasn't doing that for effect. My neck was bugging me. Remember, David does this. Where did David learn this from? From Saul. Here, I want you to take Uriah and you go out and attack. And when the battle is fierce, because Saul didn't give this order, when the battle is fierce, withdraw from him. He learned a little bit from this man Saul. But notice what Saul does. He puts him in charge of 1,000 men. He goes out and before the people, and David had success in all of his undertakings. So if you've already got an issue with your boss, further success does not help. David had success in all of his undertakings. Why? Because of his own ability? Because of his own skill? No, for the Lord was with him. We see this, if you go back and you look at Samuel the boy, and with Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas, you see the evil actions of Hophni and Phinehas. That was pretty, okay. Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas, where you see them doing the evil, and then notice what the phrase said. Samuel grew in the stature and in the eyes of men in the Lord. Samuel grew in the eyes of the Lord. You see, you kind of have this parallelism between what is going on. You had a judge with a judge, you now have a king with a future king, and you see that when David goes out, he has great success in the Lord. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fear or fearful awe of him. Saul is at the point that he can no longer look at David and see him as a loyal servant who is going to fight his battles and be successful. But every time he sees him through the eyes of suspicion, fear, and hate. And every time he goes out and he is successful in return, it stokes the fire of hate amongst Saul. Every time he goes out and all the things he does is successful, Saul gets more and more enraged. And here's the thing, it's a fearful enragement that he has of David, to the point that he will eventually pursue the young man to kill him. Right now, he's trying to get him killed by other means. Death by cop is one of the things we do. You know, it just popped into my head. You know, people want to commit suicide, but they don't necessarily have the guts to pull the trigger, so what they do is they draw down on a police officer, hoping the police officer will kill them, and I didn't commit suicide. You have people do that because they have this weird concept of, well, if I kill myself, I don't go to heaven, but if I draw down on a police officer to kill myself, I get to go to heaven. And I look at him and I go, you failed logic a lot in high school, didn't you? Because that's absolutely illogical. You're still killing yourself. You're just letting somebody else do it. Saul is still the murderer here. And see, this is something that Saul doesn't see and a lot of people don't see. Because you let someone else be the active aggressor while you're back doing the puppet movement, string pulling, doesn't mean that you're guiltless in crime. It's like the king ordering men into battle does not absolve him from the death of the men that goes into battle. Why? He gave the order. It doesn't absolve a president who orders the assassination of another individual. While he does not pull the trigger and does not kill this man, he is as guilty as killing the man. Why? Who gave the order to kill the man? Which is why when we look at things like that, we justify, well, I didn't actually do the deed. Did you order the deed done? Yes, then you actually did the deed. This is kind of what Jesus tells us in the New Testament. If you look at a woman in lust in your mind, you've actually done it. C.S. Lewis says if you look at bacon and eggs in lust, you've committed breakfast in your heart. No, I think those are cholesterol-free eggs because you really haven't consumed anything. But all of Israel, now notice this phraseology, all of Israel and Judah, because at this time they are not a united kingdom. All of Israel and Judah loved David. The implied statement is they did not love whom? Saul. Yes. Now why would they not love Saul? Saul has demonstrated his character, has he not? Saul's character is, well, I am the tallest man on the battlefield, and I probably come from a great line of warriors from my own tribe, but I'm going to pay someone else to go fight my battle for me, even though I'm probably closer in height to Goliath than a ruddy little boy.
And he also hid in his tent.
And he hid in his tent. I didn't want to sacrifice to the Lord, but I compelled myself to do it. Now that's an arrogant statement in itself. When I saw the people fleeing, I offered. David goes out and is successful in all that he does. And it's not the hand of David that makes him successful. The text is very clear. And if you were to ask David at this point, he would make it very clear. It's not me, it's the Lord. I am only successful because the Lord makes me successful. And Saul could have been just as successful had Saul not started reading his own press. And you'll see when David does this and begins to read his own press, what happens? Follows the same path. Move forward when we get over into 2 Samuel. We on to 2 Samuel? Well, there's two of them there. You'll never know what happened. Look, it's like reading a book. If you haven't read the end, you don't know what happened. You'll be lost, people. You'll be lost. I'm only joking. Kind of. If you look at what David does when he sins, notice that David is not where he needs to be. In the day when kings go out to battle, David was in his palace. And in the evening would walk atop of the wall where he could have a view over everyone. And one of the customs was for people to bathe in the evening time. So David was up there checking out the scenery. That's right. And the text kind of gives an indicator that he's been up there more than once. And so he was in a place where he should never have been, doing something he should never have done, and then doing something he should never have done, and then killed a man. You kind of see the same thing with Saul. He was in a place that he should never have been. He should never have stepped into the role of Samuel. Did something he should never have done, offered a sacrifice. And now, you kind of see a parallel here. And not to say that the stories overlap, but there's an interesting parallel how people could make the same mistakes. What do we have going on here? We see this position back and forth between David and Saul and the disloyalty of Saul. David is a subject within his own household. David has the capability of doing great things for Saul, but all Saul sees when he hears of David's success is fear. This man will take my place. This man will supplant my throne. My son will not sit on the throne because God has already told me that won't be the case. And this man has the ability to take it from me. And I will do everything within my means to kill him. Jealousy, fear, anger, strife. These are the avenues that the enemy utilizes to destroy people that appear to be our rivals when really they are just simply doing things for God. And when we put ourselves on the side of what Saul is doing, guess what side Saul is on? Is Saul on God's side or on his own side? His own side. And that's a terrible place to be. Not because that's a Sunday school answer and that's something to say, but you are actually fighting against the Almighty. Saul has put himself in a position that he is actually fighting against the will of the Almighty. And now let me ask you, the last time you did that work out well for you? It has never worked out well for me. The times I've decided to go my own way and say, I'm doing it this way because I can, it has never, ever worked out well for me. Questions before I wrap this up? And you know? That I cannot answer? Or turn off my microphone and act like I'm having mic troubles? Next week we're going to pick up in 17 and look towards the end. We're going to see where Saul develops a clever little trap to get David killed. And our hero just evades them. That's my cliffhanger for next week. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and we thank you for this time to come together to look at your word. And Heavenly Father, the dangers of looking at Saul. But also, Heavenly Father, the danger of not learning from David, who right now is doing what you want, but in the future, as we will soon see, David falls into some of the same habits that Saul did. These men's lives serve not only as testimony to your faithfulness, testimony to your holiness, but also warning for us as believers how not to pattern our lives and how not to behave and how to behave. We ask for your blessing upon us as we depart from here, and for your continued strength to us as we go out into this community and take the message of Jesus to the world. We ask these things in your name we pray. Amen. All right.